As introduced, I'm Anna from Sustainability West Midlands. I'm not an academic, but what I'd like to share with you is just some experiences of my own, really, over the last few years supporting organisations on trying to encourage more sustainable behaviours. We are not experts in behaviour change, but we have supported lots of different organisations, and we also work with organisations that are experts like Climate Outreach and Global Action Partnership. So hopefully this will be interesting for you. Just very briefly, who is Sustainability West Midlands? We were set up back in 2002. We're a not-for-profit and we work across the private, public and third sector and our membership, trying to drive sustainable behaviour. We have a board of 15 individuals, largely from the private sector, who really heavily influence our activity. So everything we do is in line with our vision, and that is that by 2020, businesses and communities in the West Midlands are thriving in an area that is environmentally sustainable and socially just. And we actually define that. We look at 3 different measures. So we look at economic productivity, which we believe is a positive thing. We'd like to see that increasing. Jobs have such a positive impact on people's lives, and particularly if those jobs are in low carbon sectors in sustainability. So we monitor that. We look at carbon emissions for the region. Obviously, we want to see those going down, and both of those parameters are actually moving in the direction we'd like to see. And we also look at health inequality between the best and worst areas of the region. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is the gap between health inequality is actually getting worse. So there's a lot for us to do in terms of supporting organisations. These are some of our members. We have about 50 members, and you can see that University of Birmingham are members, along with Aston, various other public sector and private sector businesses. We also run lots of different networks. You can see them on the screen there. We support the NHS, we support local authorities, we have a climate resilience network. So each of these networks has hundreds of members, and they're really there to allow us to share good practice. There's an awful lot of good sustainable behaviour happening across the West Midlands, but often people aren't aware of it, and what we're trying to do is break down barriers and allow people to learn from each other. So really our success is underpinned by catalysing long-term sustainable behaviour change with our members, our network members and our customers. And we do that through our communications. We've developed lots of tools which we use and our messages, but having said all that, it isn't easy. And what I'd like to share is just some thoughts on how we can perhaps think about communicating effectively. So I'm sure we're all familiar with behavioural change campaigns like the ones you can see on the screen. Funnily enough, lots of them are around this time of year. So back in February, we had the Go Green Week at Aston University. You can see the branding there with the kestrel. They've actually chosen that branding because they've got kestrels nesting on the campus in Aston. So that is a recognisable symbol that students, staff can recognise when it comes to messages around behaviour change. On the top, Go Green Week, that was at Coventry last week. That was a partnership between the university, the council and businesses. Lots of fun activities happening. So they had a Model UN Summit, a pub quiz, litter picks, tours of the energy centre. So all sorts of exciting things happening. There's the NHS Sustainability Day and also Earth Hour, which I'm sure we're all aware of, which is coming up towards the end of March. I think all of these activities and events have their place, and they do engage with people, in a positive way. Quite often they're quite informal. They're self-selecting in terms of people choosing whether or not to be part of them. They're often quite specific, so can be focused on waste or energy. They're generally time-bound, so it's a short period where people are asked to think about their behaviour and how they might get involved. They're high-profile, they're visible, and they're fun. but I would question whether they actually influence people's behaviour in the long term. What do people take away from those events and really, sort of stick to going forwards? There's other programmes out there that are sort of longer term, and I've just pulled out one here, which is the Green Impact support, which was developed by the NUS. And it's the idea is that it brings together students and staff to drive behaviour change in green campuses, curriculums and communities. It is very effective. It's a national programme. I think they're working with about 50 education establishments. I'm sure some of you are well aware of the Green Impact tool. I think about 45,000 staff are involved. So it's an excellent programme. But again, I think we can perhaps go one step further than that and try and get a bit more out of individuals. And a really good example that I came across, it was only last week actually, is a programme at Manchester Uni called 10,000 Actions. They're working with an organisation called NetPositive Futures, who've developed this bespoke tool for the university. And I was really impressed by it. What they try and do is get staff to, it's a sort of online dashboard, all of the staff, and I think they're hoping to roll it out to students as well, can log in, go through certain exercises that ask questions about their particular role, what do they do, what budgets are they responsible for, what other activities are they involved with, and they can develop their own action plan. So it's really very bespoke to that individual, and I think it allows people to be really quite creative with the things that they are putting forward. There are fun elements to it. I know there's quizzes in there. There's, sort of very visible data, so people can see how their actions compare to others. And I think it's a very good way as well of collecting data around people's activities and then using that to think about what's our next steps in terms of sustainable behaviour. So that was quite new. I hadn't come across that before. As far as I know that is only in place at Manchester, but I really liked the way that that's a bit more bespoke perhaps than some of the other programmes. So I'd just like to go into 5, there's many more important factors, but I'd just like to pull out 5 key things maybe that we could think about when we're trying to communicate around climate change and the need for people to make changes to their behaviour to be more sustainable. Quite high level, but things that, perhaps are fundamental to behaviour change campaigns. So firstly is to think about identifying the sustainable behaviour that you want to see happening, and obviously providing rewards or incentives to do that, and equally disincentivising undesirable behaviour. And I've just put a couple of examples on there. Obviously coffee cups is a massive issue, and I know Starbucks, and I've put Costa there, that should say Costa, are trying to encourage people to bring their own cups along by giving you a fairly small discount on the price of your coffee if you do. The reports are that is successful. There is a visible decrease in the number of coffee cups, but as a whole, it's not huge, the millions of coffee cups that are used each day. But it still is an incentive that would work for some people. Another example is the 5p carrier bag charge, which I think is a great incentive scheme. You can see the results there in terms of the number of bags that have been taken out of circulation and the amount of money that's been raised for charity. And I think with that, it's also important to recognise that by bringing in that, when people are at the checkout and they are taking their reusable bags along, it's just highlighting reuse as a behaviour that is perhaps then much more visible, and people might take away and apply to other aspects of their lifestyle. Secondly, I think it's important to think about actual physical, real barriers or perceived barriers that might be there for individuals. And for this one, I just thought a little bit about my own experience in cycle commuting to work, which was something I'd wanted to do for a long time. I hadn't done it for various different reasons. And then the steps that I sort of went through to actually start doing it regularly. So first of all, I had no bike, but I was able to use the cycle scheme, which is obviously a government initiative, which is a salary sacrifice scheme and allows you to more cheaply buy a bicycle over a period of time. So I took advantage of that. I also had a perception that actually cycling around Birmingham was quite dangerous. It was going to be a scary thing to do. So I got hold of the free Birmingham Greenways leaflet, which has some excellent cycling and walking routes on. I did a couple of practice goes getting in and out of work, so that overcame that barrier. Cycle maintenance, my skills are absolutely zero. I'm quite lucky that my dad is pretty good at that, and he can be bribed with a bacon sandwich to come over and have a look at my bike. But I know Birmingham City Council, through their Cycle Revolution programme, are offering free training. They do some ladies-only courses, and I think that's really positive in, again, overcoming those perceived barriers. And then finally, it was just asking at work, I'd like to cycle in, that's my office at the bottom there. Is there a shower? Where can I put my bike? So Groundwork, it's a Groundwork UK office. They've ensured that those facilities are there to allow me to cycle in, be more sustainable, and all of those barriers are broken down. I think it's also important to realise the power of social norms, how people generally want to behave and do what everybody else is doing. There is often an element of competitiveness as well. And I know there was a study done in America looking at hotel towel reuse, which you might be aware of. And it was really interesting, just the difference in subtle messaging that's used on the little things that you get in your hotel room, which really increased the levels of towel reuse. So they compared 3 different information notices. One of them said, we'd like you to reuse your towel for the good of the planet. And there was a certain increase in reuse of towels. The other one said, we'd like you to do it, and so many people in this hotel are already doing it and reusing their towels for 2 or 3 days. Had a bit of an increase. And then their final notice said, so many people in this room reuse their towels. And there's a really quite a big increase in the number of people who actually reuse their towels. So I think it's a really simple but powerful message around how we communicate sustainable behaviour. Just a few others to finish on, really. I think focusing on the motivations. We talked about extrinsic factors, things like monetary incentives and rewards, and I think they are important, but actually for longer term behaviour change, it's often critical to appeal to people's values, what they hold important to themselves, to make sure that behaviour change is long term. And it's important to think about how you frame messages. Climate Outreach, which are an organisation who do an awful lot on communicating, they have got all sorts of resources on their website, and it's very subtle differences in language to talk to different community groups, from faith groups to climate change deniers, and it's really thinking about what values they will be important to them, just words that will really resonate with different community groups. So I'd recommend having a look on their website, and there is a strong link between, as I've said, intrinsic values and sustainable behaviour. And then the fifth and final, is really to look at leveraging the natural human instinct to play, to compete, and we've touched on that already with things like quizzes and competitions, to earn rewards, to test ourselves, and to take care of loved ones. They're all intrinsic behaviours, and just to finish, I'd just like to quickly go through a case study of the Operation TLC campaign. So this was a behaviour change programme that was developed by GAP, which is Global Action Partnership, and Barts Health NHS. And they developed a big campaign. It was called Operation TLC, which in itself I think is a great name. It's sort of nurturing, and I think particularly relevant for the NHS. TLC actually stands for turning equipment off, lights out and controlling temperatures. So it's all around energy efficiency and cost saving. But the messaging was done very much around the patient experience. So obviously for those working in the NHS, this is a big reason why they choose that profession. They want to care for people, and so this is appealing to their intrinsic values. All of the messaging was around the patient experience. So it was, let's help our patients to get more sleep by turning the lights out. Let's make the temperature more comfortable by turning the heating down a bit. Let's shut doors, obviously stopping drafts and reducing energy, because it's going to decrease disturbances for our patients. There was no green messaging at all around the campaign. So as I say, it's been delivered in various different trusts. You can see them there. And there are some estimates that if it was implemented across all NHS trusts, could see huge savings. But just to finish really on some of the achievements that they've had there. So the reports from patients were that there's been about a quarter less intrusions on their privacy, a third less disruptions to sleep, and as we all know, sleep is really important when you are recovering in hospital. There's about 40% less requests from patients to turn the heating down or, change the temperature in their room. So hopefully the results are there in terms of a better patient experience. Almost as an aside really, they've saved 2,000 tonnes per year of carbon, over £425,000 in costs, which they do communicate and they do celebrate so people can see the impact of their behaviour change. And as I say, the potential is there if this is rolled out to save a lot more money and a lot more carbon. So I really like that case study as one where we don't actually even need to mention the green impact sometimes of the things that we're trying to achieve. So I hope that was interesting. If anybody wants any more information, contact me and I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.